Welcome to Tiny Accounting. My name is Ida. In today's video, we will discuss dividend and dividend tax for limited liability companies based in Denmark. After the first fiscal year has ended and the company income tax is calculated, the company can choose to distribute the remaining profits as dividends to the shareholders. The dividend tax is 0%, 27%, or 42% when paid to the shareholders, depending on how much dividend is distributed and if the shareholder is a person or a company. So, what is a dividend? A dividend is a part of the profit that is passed on to the owners of the company. An owner is also a shareholder. When you pass some of the profit on to the owners, then you can also call it to pay a dividend, to distribute a dividend. The company does not have to pay a dividend to the company's owners if there has been a profit. However, if there is a lot of money in the company, it can often make sense to do this. Furthermore, if you are both own the company and are employed by the company as a director with a salary, there may be a tax gain for you by paying yourself a dividend also. So, what amounts can be distributed as dividends? The company can distribute reserves as dividends to the shareholders. Reserves are basically profit after company income tax is paid, which is accumulated in the company. When can a dividend be distributed? When a company has had a profit, then dividends can be distributed to the shareholders. However, it is not allowed to distribute a dividend during the first fiscal year. So, if you have an APS, then you have to wait until the first fiscal year has ended and until the annual report has been prepared. So, how do you distribute a dividend? A dividend must always be approved at a general meeting. We also call a general meeting a shareholder meeting or a general assembly. There are two types of general meeting: the ordinary general meeting and the extraordinary general meeting. The ordinary general meeting, this is where the shareholders approve the annual report. This is also where the shareholders can decide that a dividend must be distributed to the shareholders. The ordinary general meeting is held once per year. The extraordinary general meeting. An extraordinary general meeting can be held during the year if some critical decisions cannot wait until the ordinary general meeting. These might be changes to the management, new auditor for example, but this also applies to the distribution of dividends for the current year. It is important to note that dividends and dividend tax must be declared to the Danish tax office. The decision to distribute a dividend is recorded in the minutes of the general meeting. The minutes is kind of a summary of the meeting that states what was decided. Sometimes minutes are also called a protocol. If it is decided to distribute a dividend, then the dividend and the dividend tax are reported to the Danish tax office on skatteerhverv in the following month. So, what about the distribution of dividends in the first fiscal year? It is not allowed to distribute dividends during the first fiscal year. Dividend tax needs to be paid when dividends are distributed to shareholders who are physical persons. The dividend tax in 2021 ranges from 27% to 42%, depending on how much dividend is distributed. You can see some examples of how the dividend tax is calculated on our blog. You will find a link here on the screen. The dividend and dividend tax is declared on skatteerhverv, which is the tax office website. The company is always obliged to withhold 27% in dividend tax when distributing dividend to a person. The dividend tax is due for payment in the following month on the 10th day. The company uses the payment details for skattekonten to pay the dividend tax. The payment ID is shown when submitting the declaration of the dividend and dividend tax. If the dividend exceeds the threshold and the dividend tax increases from 27% to 42%, then the difference in tax is paid by the shareholder to the tax office. This can be done either as a prepayment on the self-assessment for the year or the annual tax summary. And what about married couples? There are special rules if you're married. The amount you can distribute as a dividend with the low 27% dividend tax is double if you're married. What about distribution of dividends to holding companies? Holding companies that own more than 10% of a company do not have to pay dividend tax. What if a holding company owns your company? Suppose you have a profit in your limited liability company and you want to transfer this profit to your holding company. In that case, it comes down to how many shares your holding company owns, if the holding company will need to pay dividend tax or not. If your holding company owns 10% or more of the shares of the company, then the company is allowed to distribute the dividend to holding company without withholding dividend tax. Why would you transfer a dividend to the holding company? By transferring the profit to the holding company, the profit gets protected in case the company would get any claims or legal problems in the future. This is because the money has been paid out as a dividend to the holding company. When the money is paid to the holding company, then you can use it for new investments or just hold it there for safety purposes. The tax office can, in some situations, claim the money again from the holding company if, for example, employee taxes are unpaid, but this requires a 50% or more shareholder stake by the holding company. So, is it a better option to receive a salary or to receive a dividend? For the majority, it is best to first receive a salary up to the limit of the maximum tax bracket and then afterwards to receive a dividend up to the limit of the low 27% tax rate, and then to receive a salary where the maximum tax applies. You can see some examples on our blog. If you have any questions about dividend and dividend tax for limited liability companies based in Denmark, reach out to us and schedule a consulting call. You can schedule your online meeting from the front page of our website daniaaccounting.com, or you can call us on +45 7027 2713. My name is Ida. We are Dania Accounting. Thank you for watching.